We pick up our story in Genesis chapter 47. The famine continues. It has to continue if Joseph is indeed a man with the divine gift of interpreting dreams. He said there would be 7 good years and then 7 years of famine. The years of famine have to happen or Joseph's credibility is shot. The text never discusses any other possibility than that the famine would continue. It is assumed that Joseph is a man who gets his specialized knowledge from God, and that he can be completely trusted. It is clear that everyone in Joseph's circle believes this. It's clear that Pharaoh certainly believes it. Notice that Joseph doesn't head off to Goshen to live with his father and family. Many Christians have been called to leave their families and go to a foreign place in the service of Jesus Christ. Joseph does this. He continues to do the work for which God so wonderfully gifted him, even though it requires him to dwell away from home. He continues to serve as the principal administrator of Egyptian affairs. Through the ebb and flow of life, God continues to employ us in the gifts he has given us. Joseph made Pharaoh rich. It was Pharaoh's court that had the good sense to store up the grain, and Pharaoh had the good sense to give Joseph the credit. First, the Egyptians spent all their money on food, so Pharaoh had all their money. Then, as the famine continued, they traded in their livestock for food, so now Pharaoh owns all their livestock. Then, as the famine continues, they turn their land over to Pharaoh for food. So now Pharaoh owns all the land, and the people are tenant farmers. They basically become indentured servants. The famine must be coming to an end. Joseph gives the people seed for their future crop under the condition that Pharaoh gets 20% of their harvest, a 20% tax. If you think that seems high, remember that in Western democracies of today, the rate of taxation is more than that and can be double that. Joseph continues to increase Pharaoh's wealth and power. However, he does it in a way that is acceptable to the populace. They know that without Joseph's wisdom, they would all be dead. And Joseph performs all this government service without a hint of corruption. This is typical of what God has done throughout all of history. He uses his choice, special servants to bless the whole nation, even the whole civilization. This is the story of Western culture. A few godly men and women, the 1%, if you will, have built a culture of astonishing blessing for everyone, even though most of the citizens of the West have no appreciation for God, no appreciation for his Son, no appreciation for his people, and they do not give him glory for their blessings. Jacob's last 17 years were a time of great blessing. His life before this had been uneven at best. He had suffered a lot, but God bestowed upon him nearly 2 decades of peace and joy in the presence of his son Joseph. Jacob asks to meet with Joseph. He makes Joseph swear to bury him with his fathers in the land of Canaan. When he was young, Joseph had been cared for by Jacob for 17 years. Now Joseph takes care of Jacob for his last 17 years. Now, often the kids end up taking care of their parents, and that's the way it is here. Jacob is approaching the end of his life. Joseph believes that it is important for his kids to be with their grandfather at the time of his death, and he brings them to him. Jacob reviews God's specific blessings in his long and very interesting life. He had had many adventures, but God's faithfulness in blessing Jacob is what stands out, especially for someone so undeserving. But to his credit, Jacob gives the glory to God for his blessings. Jacob recites God's promises, and they involve 2 things: descendants and land. Jacob claims Joseph's 2 sons as his own. It's a special claim, and surely it is because they had an Egyptian mother. He is, in a manner of speaking, adopting them. As I have said elsewhere, adoption has always been a big part of the plan of God. Matthew Henry observes that Jacob does not pray that Joseph's sons would continue as big shots in Egypt, but that they would join Jacob's other offspring in inheriting the land that God had promised. Henry also says it is good to acquaint young people that are coming into the world with the aged servants of God who are going out of it. whose dying testimony to the goodness of God and the pleasantness of wisdom's ways may be a great encouragement to the rising generation.